Raise your hand if this is your first time here at inside the Cincinnati Observatory. Most of you. Wow. Yeah, that's fantastic. This is one of Cincinnati's great historic treasures, I think. So I hope you really appreciate it. Have a little bit of time to look around in the lobby on the shelves out here, and a little time to talk with each other. So I'm Stuart Schaefer. Welcome to this meeting. I'm the chair of the Cincinnati chapter. So now that I've said that, this is now an official meeting, and we can proceed. And I want to thank Denis Beausejour for our speaker here in a couple of minutes. I've actually heard Denis's story before, and the book that he's got available. If you're interested, he can sell you one and sign it for you. But it's an amazing story of a person who started with modest means and came to P&G, rose to the top of the company, had a calling in life that completely changed everything. And I won't say any more because I want to leave you on pins and needles for Denis's talk. So without further ado, Denis. Great. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks everyone. It's great to meet some old friends again and to meet some new friends. We share P&G in common, and I'm just really honored to be able to speak with you tonight. When Stuart told me the venue was the observatory, I really felt like the theme of my talk should be curiosity. And through some of the stories that I'll share and some of the stories in my new book, and I just hope to encourage us all to practice curiosity in a heightened way in all dimensions of our life. And this observatory is a wonderful example of that. I've lived in Cincinnati 30 years and never been here, but I was looking it up online, and it's the oldest running observatory in the country since 1842. So obviously scouring the cosmos for discoveries, curious people build telescopes. So let's start with a definition of curiosity and what I mean tonight. And Webster says it's a strong desire to know or learn something. And I thought a couple of thought leaders would help kind of dial in curiosity, one being physicist Albert Einstein. Here's what he said: "The important thing is to not stop questioning. Curiosity has its own reason for existing. One cannot help but be in awe when one contemplates the mystery of eternity, of life, of the marvelous structure of reality. It is enough if one tries to comprehend only a little of this mystery every day." And so I hope to follow his directions here in my talk tonight. Best-selling author Bryant McGill says, "Curiosity is one of the great secrets of happiness." And I have really found that. So I'm going to highlight two of the many benefits of curiosity, one for your work life and one for your personal life. And I hope this will encourage you and challenge you maybe into some new directions. The first half of my talk will focus on a deeply enjoyable 22-year career at P&G and how our culture of curiosity produced discovery, innovative ideas, and breakthrough results. But also curiosity, I can guarantee you, will turbocharge your work if you're still working. If you're retired, maybe you're going to be mentoring somebody who's working. And then the second half is going to focus on how a really existential crisis drove me to the most intense curiosity of my life that resulted in the discovery of the biggest idea I've ever heard, which is the title of my book. This has given me enduring, transcendent happiness, and it's available to all who are honestly curious. So then I'll open it up for questions before we get curious about what we might be looking at up there. Does that sound good? Okay, great. So my first job was at McDonald's, and my boss there had a mantra: people who know how will always be working for people who know why. And that curiosity always begins with why, doesn't it? And so that was the heart of the culture at P&G when I joined in Toronto in 1978 after graduating from Queen's Business School. And to say it was kind of a miracle would be an understatement, but as Stuart mentioned, I come from a lower middle class family in Ottawa, and I was the first one in my family to go to college. So it was a fairly big deal, and I always am amazed. It's the business school I could not get into today. You know, so, and maybe that's true for many of us. Anyway, I was a rookie brand assistant on Pampers, was my first brand, and my first task was to write a Nielsen market summary, okay? And I see some head shaking. So over the course of the first few weeks, I rewrote that baby 21 times. And far from being inefficient, it was a masterclass on thinking and writing, and communication for that matter. You know, one region in the country is growing 63%, while the rest of the regions average 45%. Why? So digging into the previous Nielsen summaries, the brand's budget plan, I discovered several insights, factors, business lessons. My boss was teaching me to think and to peel the onion, in addition to expressing myself more clearly and more persuasively, presenting brand opportunities to my readers, which was typically our business team, our agency, and senior management. Soon after finally publishing that Nielsen summary, my boss asked me to join the Pampers professional services team at a baby fair in Ottawa, the nation's capital, about 5 hours away, and I grew up through elementary school in Ottawa. So I said, okay, that'd be a great business trip and see some old friends. Little did I know, I was 21 years old and pretty green, very green. In 2 long days, I changed dozens and dozens of diapers. And I got an up close and personal initiation into the hearts and minds of mothers caring for their babies. And I gained many insights, but 2 kind of stood out. First, disposable diapers were obviously convenient, but baby skin care was by far the most important thing for moms. Second, Pampers had a great reputation and a market share of 88%, but the diaper change market was still mostly cloth diapers, like 80% cloth diapers. So many moms would buy Pampers, which were typically in those days sold in 12 packs. They would soon run out, reverting to use their cloth diapers at home until they went to the store the following week. So for the next several years, Pampers added skincare features, better top sheets, more absorbent ingredients in the padding material, better containment features, skin and dryness demonstrations in the advertising. We would put a baby's naked bottom on the diaper with a sheet, and they would see the wet, and they would see no wet on the Pampers. So it was all of that, and we introduced large count packs, which sounds totally obvious, but as fast as we could, and as fast as we could build the factories and the machines to make them, the business exploded. And soon, very soon after, Pampers was seen as the gold standard in baby care. In the meantime, I'd been introduced to the habit of curiosity, and I'd seen the inevitable connection between curiosity, discovery of new insights, and explosive business results. And literally, I would never be the same. So over the next 2 decades, I learned hundreds of ways to discover the consumer insights and how to better meet consumer needs. And we worked with market research, product development, sales, our advertising agencies. We built a culture of consumer curiosity where their thoughts and their perceptions were the dominating topic in our daily conversations. And the book title kind of comes from the idea where it comes from the experience of a brand assistant walking in. I got a big idea. And anyway, that was the culture. And in my experience, the place was really alive. I mean, it was alive. So in 1988, P&G moved me to Sydney, Australia, where my assignment was to take the newly acquired Richardson Vicks company and transform it into a vibrant P&G operation. We were decades behind Unilever, Colgate, and Kimberly-Clark in that market. So our first P&G brand launch was Pert 2-in-1. Now, consumers down under did not believe anything could both clean and condition hair properly. Our technology delivered in blind tests, but we needed to break this consumer disbelief. So that happened through an amazing spokesperson. We found a well-known actress, a former Miss Australia, and she had fantastic thick hair, and she loved Pert. She was very active, and she just loved it, and so she was happy to endorse it. So she brought instant credibility to address the key consumer disbelief, and Pert stormed to market leadership. In 1992, P&G moved us to Japan. Japanese moms were kind of fanatical in the categories of hygiene and germs. So we had an antibacterial brand called Muse, kind of the safeguard of Japan. And we discovered the germ situations that kids get into, which moms feared the most. So you can imagine kids playing in sandboxes, which doubled as litter for a large feral cat population. You can look at little boys putting their hands on the adult urinals. And you can look at them drinking one after the other from public fountains with their lips touching the thing, and you get the idea. So we literally put these scenes into our advertising and then had a demonstration about the product being able to clean all that. And literally a change of advertising grew the business 30%. So it was just understanding what the consumer was thinking and trying to dial into what she was doing or he was doing. So our next stop was China. And we had some penetration in the big cities, but we needed to understand rural consumers. That was still, 80% of the population. So I went and lived on a farm in a small village. And it was very awkward. The village had not seen very many Westerners. And every night they'd put me in a corner, and then the village would gather around, and then it would be Q&A time. And they wanted to know how much money I made, how old I was, why my feet were so big, how I could navigate how was I doing with the outhouse and the exterior shower arrangements, which is basically a pail of water with a little scoop, and little chuckling going on in the background as I was trying to, do my business. Anyway, we learned that their toothbrushing habits involved using very high suds and, salty sweet is a big deal now. Well, back in those days, they were salty sweet flavored toothpaste. Ours were sweet mint, and we didn't have the salty taste, but they needed that little salty taste and really stiff brushes to basically scrub what they thought was smooth enamel surfaces and porcelain-like surface. It's a little bit like how you and I might think about cleaning a toilet bowl. And that was their teeth. Watching them brush their teeth, it was amazing. It was like the Olympics, and suds coming out. And it was amazing. So, we had to help them realize that their teeth were actually like coral reef. They had lots of holes, and they were kind of a structure like a coral reef. So we came up with this powerful eggshell demonstration. We dipped the egg half in vinegar without crest and half in vinegar with crest, and then you pull the egg out, and one side's really soft and totally deteriorated, and the other side's still really hard. And we had zigzag brushes for the first time, and they eventually saw that Crest's fluoride formula was actually going to improve the structure of their teeth. So the brushes helped. Our product team delivered a big blind test winner with superior aesthetics that matched their expectations and exceeded, actually. And then the R&D team got the National Committee for Oral Health's endorsement on Crest's superior efficacy. So we were in business because the Communist Party said that Crest was the cat's meow. The culture also produced some fun and memorable experiences. And I don't know, we've got probably all tons of P&G stories of people, but I've two stories. One was in Canada, when our international management would come to visit once a year, and brand managers got to attend these meetings, and they were pressure packed, and you'd be writing issue sheets and preparing all day long. But we were mainly in the front of the management as fodder so that the senior managers we worked for could be off to the side, you know, to deflect the shrapnel that was flying in these meetings. Anyway, the new head of international was Ed Arzt, and everybody was curious about him because he had a very tough reputation, and it was rumored that his nickname was the Prince of Darkness. So the Canadian brand managers decided to make a crazy bet. Who would be able to work the words Prince of Darkness into their presentation? I know that sounds ridiculous, but this was the era of the crazy Canuck downhill skiers taking on the world, right? So here we were, the crazy Canucks. So I'm on Duncan Hines baking mixes. My business is booming. However, we took a hit on profit margins, which Mr. Arzt zeroed in on immediately with this booming voice. "What's going on with your margins, son? This looks more like a hobby than a brand." So I said, "Well, Mr. Arzt, General Mills has aggressively increased promotion spending, and we are simply not going to let them buy market share. We are working on cost savings, and we're going to have record volumes, and we'll get the profit sorted out." Then I added, "The new Canadian president at General Mills is doing this cut rate promotion strategy on all their category. From what we can tell, he's trying to make a name for himself in the short run. Some of my college buddies working over there call him the Prince of Darkness." And Ed looks down at me like this. And everybody on the side who's, you know, in the meeting is like splitting a gut. So trying to control themselves. Anyway, fast forward, John Pepper was the head of international when I was the GM in Australia. We were finally doing well. We had our Pampers launch was a disaster, and it really hurt me because it was my first brand, and we just got crushed by Kimberly-Clark, lost $10 million. It was bad. But we retooled our strategy. We got focused on more health and beauty care brands, and we were rebounding. Profit was rebounding. Anyway, John was there. It was a tough meeting, but he was glad to see that what we were doing was finally working. That night, we had a dinner cruise with leaders and spouses on Sydney's beautiful harbor. And that night, John displayed his unending curiosity, getting to know our team and asking a lot of questions. He and my wife, Marianne, had a brief conversation, and then they called me over. I'm thinking, what's happening here? So she had told them, we have 3 boys, and she was feeling like she wanted one more child, but I was done. And so John and Francie had 3 boys, and then were blessed with a girl. So in a way that only John can do authentically. Is that Mr. Pepper calling? But in a way that only John Pepper could do, you know, he comes up to me and he's right in my face and he says, "You got to go for a girl. You got to go for a girl." So anyway, shortly after enrolling my boss's boss's boss, Marianne, who was also a brand manager in Toronto where we met, wrote me a 1-page memo called The Fourth. It also turned out that the book, Choosing the Sex of Your Baby, was very popular at the time. So the rest is history, and a year later, our daughter Mariel was born in Japan. And we were at year-end meetings telling John the good news, and he said, "I had a lot to do with that baby." And there were people standing around who didn't know the story, and they're thinking, "What?" So anyway, this enduringly happy blessing in our family may not have happened without the irrepressible curiosity of John Pepper. Anyway, life was rolling along great at P&G until January 17th, 1995. At 5:46 in the morning, a magnitude 7.2 earthquake rolled through Kobe, Japan, where we were located. The devastation was catastrophic. My good friends, the Smiths, are here, and they were right in that with us. 35,000 buildings collapsed, elevated expressways keeled over, and the 4 bridges to Roko Island were rendered unusable. So the P&G headquarters and our apartment were cut off from the mainland. Fires burned for days because they left the gas on too long, and the death toll rose to 7,000. So I had returned from a trip to Cincinnati the night before this and went to work early because I woke up early and with jet lag. I was on my way back to my office with a coffee from the vending machine when the quake hit, and I was thrown to the ground. I was almost killed by these huge gray steel product display bookcases, and when you got a lot of detergents and stuff on there, it's heavy. So it landed, just crashes in inches from my head. And we were just a mile from the epicenter. So that near-death experience was a huge wake-up call for me. And now once I knew my family was all right, we went to work on figuring out what to do. So our office and my family's apartment were unlivable. We huddled for a few days at the international school where our kids went. It was a 2-story building, had a lot less damage. And suppliers organized boats for us eventually, and we relocated to Osaka. And a few days later, we sent our families back to our home countries, the expats, and we found temporary office space in Osaka. So as work resumed, separated from my family, I began asking questions I hadn't pondered since I was in college. In the excitement of building my career, I had put aside my curiosity about many aspects of my life. I had also developed some very bad habits. I was routinely eating and drinking way too much. I was an absentee dad. I was unfaithful to my wife. I looked pretty good on the outside, but I was actually broken on the inside. I knew my purpose and vision as a P&G executive, but I did not know why I was on the earth. I did not have the big picture. What is the purpose of life? Is it to be a husband, a father, a good person, serve others, treat the environment well, find true happiness, live a long life? In other words, I had no clue, but I became very curious about what is the good life? What is the good life? And I realized that I was not very well read outside from my spy thrillers, business books, and the histories and cultures of the countries that we were moving to. And so I decided to read. I read Plato, Homer, the Buddha, the Quran, and the Bible. Also read some philosophers like Martin Buber, Viktor Frankl, and M. Scott Peck, and a book on comparative religions. And I was kind of embarrassed at my overall ignorance of the world around me. But I opened my mind and started curiously looking at some of these questions. One verse from the old Jewish wisdom literature got my attention. It said this. It said, "God has made everything beautiful for its own time. He has planted eternity in the human heart, but even so, people cannot see the whole scope of God's work from beginning to end." My search for the mysteries of life had a lot of questions. Why am I here? Is the universe an accident? Why is my conscience speaking so loudly to me? I knew from experience and imagination that I did have eternity in my heart because I was feeling a vacuum in there. And I had no idea what it was. I was clueless about the scope of what God was doing or what he expected of me. So I continued reading, started seeing some commonalities in these different streams and different philosophies, some very common ideas. However, as I continued reading, I began to experience something that set the Bible apart. Unlike the other books, which were excellent, the Bible was grabbing my attention in a unique way. I felt like I was in the grip of a tractor beam, being reeled in. And the Bible seemed to be reading me. And this was disconcerting. But there was a presence and a power that I was feeling while I was reading this. The Bible felt like it was in a league of its own. And I felt especially drawn by the words of Jesus. And I'll just read a few of these words that stuck with me kind of slowly, and you can maybe get the feel of what was happening to me. Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Come to me, and I'll give you rest. I am the light of the world. I am the bread of life. I have living water, so you won't ever thirst again. I will set you free. I will raise you to eternal life. I am the way and the truth and the life. Seek first the kingdom. Now, I began to realize that Jesus was offering something that no other system or philosophy was offering. His vision of the kingdom was stunning, way beyond the limited perspective that I was living for at the time. Jesus got me thinking about the questions of origin, purpose, and destiny. And I became very curious about that. In the meantime, the other books I was reading, the religions and the stream of thought, had very similar messages. Work hard, do good. Have your good deeds outweigh your bad deeds. For their adherents, there was never a certainty of success. It was about trying harder and tipping the scales in our favor. That felt to me exhausting. No wonder most people hate religion. Most of us live with a foggy version of this summary for much of our lives. We try our best. We hope for the best. At funerals, we talk about our loved one being in a better place. And that, by the way, is not usually spoken very convincingly. Oh, they're in a better place, but I'm really glad I'm here. Anyway, I finally realized Jesus didn't come to start a religion. You know, I'm pretty sure he would intensely dislike terms like Christianity or evangelical or dogma, because he would much rather talk about his kingdom. And he offers us a kingdom and a relationship. So I concluded that it was only Jesus who was offering a plan that does not rely on my performance. And my performance at this point in time, you have to remember, was awful. Jesus says, come to me. I've met all the demands of God perfectly. If you trust me, you have eternal life. I'm the good shepherd. I'm the resurrection and the life. I'm the Messiah. I'm the only way to the Father. I'm making everything new. One day you're going to have a resurrection body like mine. And one day I'm going to make a new heaven and a new earth. And we're going to do it right the way it was intended in the beginning. We're going to get it right. And everything's going to be perfect. And you're going to live in perfection forever as you create, explore, and rule the cosmos with me. Now, how in the world did he do that? How in the world does that happen? Well, this is where the Bible gets pretty riveting, because in Jesus, God himself became a human being. He came to make a way for us and to know us deeply and to enjoy him forever. Jesus says your future is not based on your performance. Your future is based on my performance, which is perfect. Now, that right there was the biggest idea I'd ever heard. Because even churches get to the point where they're talking about try harder, do better, next week, whatever, and you go over and over and over the same ground again, and it's all about trying harder. That's not the message of the Bible. The message of the Bible is, it's done. I did it for you. And so I was fluent in big ideas. I mean, I had people coming in my office with a big idea every day. This thing broke my idea meter. This was something I'd never heard. And I became intensely curious about who was this God who would do things this way. And if you've lacked curiosity, by the way, on these topics, you're not alone. In a national survey, only 25% of Americans have read the Bible. And I'm here to challenge you to get curious about the Bible. It is the perennial global bestseller, perennial, but for many mostly serves as bookshelf decoration or coffee table. I have concluded in this search, although I was not educated because there's a lot of good stuff I had not read, you can't be educated unless you've really read the Bible and come to grips with what it's all about and what it says. And so more than an education, in the Bible you'll discover incredibly good news. God wants you, and he has made a way for you to be in relationship with him. This is achieved not only by his death for our sins, but his resurrection from the grave that ended the finality of death. And so he delights in you. He wants to enjoy an intimate relationship with you. He wants us to be able to hear his voice. And that's what happened to me in the hillsides of China. In this process, I finally had the experience of him speaking to me and I understanding, not audibly, but in my spirit, understanding what he was saying. And he was inviting me into a daily adventure of faith, an adventure that, ended up leaving a 7-figure job at P&G and going into ministry, and with no firm game plan or wondering how it would work out, and having the time of my life. And he alone has the antidote to anxiety, fear, and burnout. And he alone can give lasting peace and purpose and significance. So the benefits of curiosity about Jesus are astounding. But how do we activate this curiosity? Well, he says, if we seek him with all of our heart, we will find him. He will communicate with us. And he is commanding all of us to change our thinking and come to him. He's going to judge the world and make everything right. There's going to be no more tears, no more pain, no more aging, no more death. Everything we hope for but can never attain on our own. And all we have to do is respond to him. Admit your need for God, for the place you cannot touch on your own. Be honest about the places in your life that are broken. Curiously investigate. Ask God to show you the way to the good life. And especially read the Bible for yourself. Let him speak to you. And I would recommend, if you've never done that, start in John's Gospel. And my book is filled with stories about people who went through this process and found the way to do life in the kingdom. And it's not religious. It's spiritual, but it's not religious. It's not formal. It's being yourself in the place and the gifts God's given you and loving others through what you do, whether you're a dentist, a lawyer, an accountant, or a marketing guy at P&G. One of my favorite stories about people that found the king in the kingdom was Charlie Duke. For those of you who are Apollo fans, Charlie Duke was the Lunar Command Module pilot on Apollo 16. So he was the 9th man to walk on the moon. And you might even remember he had a famous southern drawl when he was walking around over there. And he came back in this glorious ticker tape parade, national fame, was promoted to general, and he crashed because he realized, I'm never going to be able to do anything like that. And not only that, but to be an astronaut, you pretty much have to give up your life in those days. And so his marriage was on the rocks. His kids were estranged from him. And he discovered the kingdom. He discovered King Jesus. And the general didn't have a life after walking on the moon until he met the king. And now, well, he's really old now, but for the last 30 years, he's been doing marriage retreats. Him and his wife got reconciled. He's been out, sharing the good news. So there's so many stories like that, that people have just had radical transformation in their life. And that's the difference between a religion where we're trying to work our way to God and a relationship where God does the work and invites us to join in. So may curiosity change your work and your life, and get a hold of the biggest idea, and you will find peace, purpose, and significance. I guarantee it. And there's just one quote of Jesus that I thought would be a good way to finish. Are you tired, worn out, burned out on religion? Come to me. Get away with me and you'll recover your life. I'll show you how to take a real rest. Walk with me and work with me. Watch how I do it. Learn the unforced rhythms of grace. I won't lay anything heavy or ill-fitting on you. Keep company with me and you'll learn to live freely and lightly. Jesus of Nazareth. Thanks so much for your attention, and I'll open it up to questions now.